Well, Rod, I can't thank you enough for joining us here today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today here in this Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of the weekend. Now, as you know, George and I have been involved in a crowdsourced investigation that didn't actually start with Seth Rich. But the interesting thing about the crowdsource is that it always sort of leads you to where the most important information is.
Yeah, that's it, sure.
And right now we're on Seth Rich, and I was really particularly interested in seeing the way the media treated you, because it's another focus of what I'm doing is examining the media. Can you talk about that a little bit, the whole assault on you directly after you went on to Fox?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I've been with Fox News now for about 12, 13 years as a crime analyst, talking about everything from San Bernardino to the Pulse nightclub shooting, these types of crimes, right? And so when I went on Fox to talk about the Seth Rich case, it's not the first time I had been on Fox talking about the Seth Rich case.
Oh, really?
I was on Fox, Fox and Friends back in October of last year, and I did what we call a walk and talk. I walked the scene on Flagler Street, and I looked at the crime scene from the perspective, what if this were a botched robbery? And interestingly enough, guys, back then, I actually believed it could have been a botched robbery. I mean, I could see how that could be.
Right.
And that was the narrative that the police department was saying at the time. They believed it was a botched street robbery.
Still saying that, aren't they?
They're still saying that. And so, you know, back in October, I agreed. So when the family brought me on board, and you can stop me if I'm going too far ahead.
No, please.
But when the family brought me on board, and again, I can't talk anything about the investigation itself.
We understand.
Because I have I have what I call a shut up order. That's what it is, a shut up, don't say anything.
And I want to talk about that in a minute.
But when the family brought me on board back in March of this year, right, they brought me on board to investigate a murder, which is what I like to say I do best. I had no clue at the time, believe it or not, about the relationships that Seth had with the DNC or WikiLeaks and the email thing and the Russian hacking. I have never followed that. I mean, I've heard about it, sure,
Right.
but I haven't really followed it. So I didn't put two and two together in terms of whatever I find in this death investigation or murder investigation is going to have some effect on the WikiLeaks thing and the Russian hacking. I wasn't focused on that at all. And that's and I've always said that because that was the truth. I'm focused on who were the bad guys. So I began the investigation. When you begin a murder investigation specifically, I always like to say you have 3 doors to go. This is what I used to teach rookies, as a matter of fact, rookie detectives. You have 3 doors to go into when you do an investigation. The first door is whether or not this was just a street crime, a botched robbery as in this case. So you want to work that possibility, right? The second door is whether or not this person's death is the result of relationships gone bad. Lovers triangle, boyfriend on the side, girlfriend, you know, those things happen quite often, right? But then the third door that you go in is the door that's related to that person's employment and relationships as it applies to his job. So I worked extensively through door number 1, okay? I mean, I talked to some of the, what I like to call knuckleheads on the street. You know, did anybody see anything? Tell me, that kind of stuff. You know, you're hitting the ground running, right? Then I started looking at door number 2, personal relationships. And again, I can't go into detail, but I would encourage your viewers and others to talk to the bar manager at Capone. I think his name's Joe Capone. He'll tell you I spent most of the time that I talked to him talking about relationships that Seth could have had. We even joked about it. I said, did Seth have 2 or 3 girls on the side? I mean, you have to ask those kind of questions. You know what I mean? Sure. And then even with Seth's girlfriend, Kelsey, we spent most of our time talking about their relationship. I never asked a word about emails because it wasn't my focus.
Sure. And is she living in D.C. or she's in Omaha at this point?
D.C.
Okay.
You mean during the time of the murder?
Yeah.
No. During the time of the murder, she was in Omaha, but she's living in D.C. now.
And they had that 89-minute phone call.
Right, I can't go into details.
Sorry.
I can't go into details.
Got it.
But that's not the only phone call you are aware of. There's other telephone calls, but that's huge in this investigation. So now I'm at door number 3 because I don't find anything in door number 1. I don't find anything to support a relationship gone bad or lovers triangle. I don't find that in door number 2.
Right.
Okay, so what a detective will do now is say, okay, well, let's look at job relationships. Maybe there's something going on with the supervisor. You know, sometimes people have problems with supervisors. It's really a terrible, toxic situation, and then maybe one winds up shooting and killing. Who knows? Anything is possible.
Maybe Amy Dacey or someone
So
like
I started looking at job related.
Right.
And now I'm starting to get pushback from certain people. Don't dig, don't dig, don't go any further. Don't look in door number 3.
Right.
And you know what I mean? You can look in door number 1, look in door number 2 all you want. Don't look in door number 3. Well, wait a minute. What's behind door number 3?
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
Sure.
Yes.
And that's where we stopped.
See, one of the things that really intrigues us is that today, Joe Biggs, I'm sure you saw, came out with an FBI document that has basically been shown to be fake, most people would say. It's very curious that the FBI would even be involved in the investigation of a civilian, because working for the DNC, that's a private organization. It's not a government organization.
That's correct.
Seth is not a federal employee, and there's no interstate aspect to his murder. So why would the FBI be involved in this at all?
Well, there's only one scenario where I can think that the FBI would have been involved. And that is, based on my experience as a detective here in D.C., sometimes meaning the D.C. Police Department, our IT department can't get into certain types of electronic devices.
I see.
And so the FBI, they have the resources to get into or crack into, whatever you want to call it, into certain types of devices. So what we would do, they wouldn't be so much involved in the investigation. They would just help us get into that data that's a part of that computer.
Forensic
so I
examination.
can see how that can happen. I mean, that
Okay.
happens all the time. Matter of fact, on the state level, many states have Bureau of Criminal Investigations on the state level. And believe it or not, local police departments rely on the BCI units, state, to help them with those types of electronic investigations.
That's a good explanation. So the FBI could be involved. And obviously you can't talk about any information related to the laptop or the phone other than what you said already, which is they wouldn't give you access to it.
No access, that's right.
Would that also be true for lab information or DNA testing, that type of thing?
It depends on the jurisdiction. Now, DC has its own DNA laboratory over at 1D, and it's state of the art. So they do their own, and they
Metro
had it,
PD, you're saying?
yeah, Metropolitan Police Department, DC. Yeah,
119 D Street.
yeah, and they had it back then, so they would have done their own DNA testing.
And when you're talking about knuckleheads, Brandon Warren, is that a knucklehead you can talk with us about, or?
No,
Okay. But he's a real person, or can't even talk about that?
I've heard of the name, but other than that, I don't know much about him.
Haven't spoken to him. Okay, that's interesting. Because George obviously spent quite a bit of time with Joe Capone and has done some reporting on that.
Yeah, I spent about 4 days there, and I saw Joe every day. And I'm more the Columbo type, where I ask 5, 6 questions, and then have a glass of wine, and then ask a couple more. And I had read all the reports, and there was a Daily Mail article about it saying that he was somehow there and Seth felt depressed, and I didn't know if that was secondhand information or firsthand information. And then there was this report that he had been put into a cab, maybe, and there was other accounts that said he had walked. And so I did what you did. I walked the whole, all the way down to Flagler. Took a couple of different routes, but I mainly went down, Georgia to Harvard. A couple different routes you can take, but it's quite a walk. It's like about a 40-minute walk.
Yeah.
And then he had a previous address at 122. I'm going to forget the address, but it was much closer, his previous address. And I walked it in about 8 minutes. So I was thinking, well, if he really did live there, 122, and I'm just spacing on the street. But it was this much shorter walk. I mean, did he really live at 2113 First Street? I mean, it just seemed like there wasn't any footprints or any metadata that actually said he lived at 21. And I realize you can't answer or talk about the investigation, but that's the first thing that struck me in doing exactly what you did with door number 1, just walking the shoes of the victim.
Sure.
Yeah, and that was kind of that got me. And then there was this period of time also from the shot shooter or whatever the shooting system from 4:20
Shot spotter.
shot spotter, yeah, from 4:20 a.m. to the 5:59 call of death. There was several articles that came out that said his parents were there There was another article that said Aaron, the brother, was there. He was sitting up talking. There was another article that came out from supposedly written by a fourth-year surgery or intern.
Right.
That said he had been shot once, third lobe of the liver, and that was still in there. And then that was just an entry wound, and then there was an exit and entry and exit wound through the abdomen, and 12 centimeters had been resected, and he seemed stable, and the guy had seen 25 of those or 30 of them, and no one had ever died in that situation. So
Has anyone seen the autopsy report?
Well, that's what we were going to ask you.
yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Neither have we.
No, I haven't been given access to the autopsy report.
And how often does that happen in a murder
It
investigation?
doesn't happen. I mean, the autopsy report for a detective is, I always used to say, is the Bible, because you're going to learn so much about the victim. The toxicology report is part of the autopsy report. That's important
Yeah.
when you're doing a murder investigation, right? I'm talking to victim now, right?
Yeah.
Entry and exit wounds, all kinds of things you learn from the autopsy report. And again, I can't go into detail, but all I would say is every investigation I've ever done, murder investigation or death investigation, you always ask, step one, let me see a copy of the autopsy report. But I want to go back to door one.
Okay.
Okay, because it's interesting, door one. Let's say this were a botched robbery.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to look at all possibilities,
Absolutely,
right?
sure.
So police officers, we get the call, shot spotter, sounds of gunshots, 21st and Flagler, I need a unit. This is what the dispatcher says, okay?
Sure.
So you got units responding, okay? I'm going dispatcher, 318, I'm going, whatever the number is, right? So the officers get on the scene. If we see that, and this is any murder investigation, I'm not just talking about this particular
Sure.
case, but this is the way it works,
Right.
right? You get on the scene, your victim is still alive and talking, right? The first thing you ask that victim as a uniformed officer, we train officers this, who shot you? Who shot you? Chicago, with the number of shootings they have, I guarantee you every time a cop rolls up on the scene, that's the first thing you want to ask that victim, because you don't know if that victim's going to die or not.
Right.
Who shot you, man? This is what you say.
That could be solving the crime right there.
Well, that's why you ask,
Yeah.
you know? Or if you don't find out who shot you, what did they look like?
Right.
So we can give what we call a lookout.
Right.
Okay? This is protocol for any shooting situation. So the first unit's on the scene, get that lookout, and you broadcast it over the air. I want to know in this investigation, I want a copy of the audible transmission from the lookout. They had to have a lookout.
Have you communicated with any of the responding officers?
No.
You haven't. And obviously no one's had access to the body cam footage or anything like that.
No, that's right.
See, the thing is, I don't want any of us here to be accused of being conspiracy theorists
Right.
or anything like that. So I really liked your answer to the FBI question, because that's a sensible answer that provides a logical alternative that debunks what most people would say about why the FBI might or might not be involved. So it brings me back to these questions like, I mean, even the cease and desist order that you've gotten from the family. Now that's specifically about talking about the case. Are you still investigating the case, or are you just ceasing and desisting from everything?
Right. Cease and desist basically from everything.
So you're fired. You're not investigating it anymore.
Right. Not investigating it on behalf of the family.
I
Anyone
see,
can
I
investigate any case they want. But
That's-
on
that's
behalf
the
of the
thing.
family, no, I'm not investigating it for them. And the cease and desist, like I said, I consider that a shut the hell up order.
Right.
Don't say a word. Don't tell anybody. Because what I want to do, and I issued a statement, I don't know if you guys saw the statement that
I'm not sure.
released about a week ago, and I'm asking the family to allow me to release my investigative report to
Oh,
the
yeah,
world.
of
I want the
course.
world to see it. I mean, I want them to see what I have. Because if people see what I have in my report, if you take the political motivation out of it, out of the equation, then you're going to say, oh, it makes sense why he thinks this.
Right.
I mean, that's what most normal people would say.
I think
you know what I
so.
mean?
I think
but take
so.
the political stuff out of it.
Right.
It just seems a little bit odd that, for instance, I believe that there was 2 meetings at each hospital that Seth Rich is shot in between. There's a meeting at the Howard University Hospital, which is a trauma center as well, and then there's the MedStar up on the hill. So Howard at the bottom to the left, W Street going west, and I was on my hands and knees that corner of W and Flagler looking straight ahead, and you can almost see MedStar on a direct line. And so he has to go to one of those two hospitals. What I find amazing is that people won't say which hospital he went to.
Oh, he went to MedStar.
He went to MedStar, so we
Oh, yeah,
can't
he went to
confirm that
MedStar.
he went to MedStar. Now, he never spent any time at Howard at all. Never.
Not from what I know, he didn't.
Okay.
And it kind of makes sense that he would go to MedStar in that area. That's the hospital of choice that we usually take shooting victims to. Between Howard and MedStar, we typically take them to MedStar. Now, Howard has what we call a crash unit as well, and they're pretty good with gunshot victims. But in that case, where that shooting happened at, I think it would have been better to go to MedStar.
Yeah.
Did you speak to the attending physician at all?
No,
Do you know who that was?
no, I don't.
This is an interesting sort of confusion surrounding the doctor, whether it's Dr. Sava, Dr. Ateljevich, or if that's the same person operating under two different names.
Oh, I see. No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I have a social security number with Sava, with those two names, and some people change their name. You know, he's from, let's say, Hungary, and he wants to be more American, so he changes his name to Sava, maybe, or maybe it's just simpler for people to say. You know, so there may be reasons why.
Right.
But a lot of aliases as well, and that that he kind of gives you pause, like maybe why is that going on, and just why the secrecy? Why not just say I was sometimes on. I remember when Gabby Giffords was shot.
Right.
There was almost hourly reporting by the physician talking
That's
about
right.
here's her CAT scan, and we're going to go in here. It was a miracle that we saved her life.
That's right.
And it's been a lot of cases like that where the doctors have been very open with the information. So you just wonder why in this situation it's so closed down.
You don't know.
There's
Yeah.
so many things like that just make you wonder why this is happening. And, it's just very confusing, and it leaves people, I think that's what leads people to this whole conspiracy theory kind of idea. To me, that's a real hot button word. Because when someone says, oh, well, Rod Wheeler is promoting a conspiracy theory that's been debunked, my first question is, well, how has it been debunked?
Right.
Where is your evidence that is stronger than his evidence that shows that he is saying something
Right.
incorrect? And none of that has come forward as far as we can see.
It hasn't come forward.
It's very odd.
And I haven't walked back anything. As a matter of fact, in the
Right.
statement that I released a week ago, I said then in my statement in writing that I do believe that there was some communication between Seth and WikiLeaks.
And we believe the
And
same.
I believe that based on common sense, first of all, you know what I mean? I guess
Yeah.
I'm a practical person. Based on common sense and, from information that we're getting from various sources. Now, does that mean that I know for a fact that that happened? Absolutely not.
Right.
But I believe that to be the case.
So I don't want you to give away any of the investigation because you've got this gag order, but can you say there was a lot of, I think in your statement, something about there was, some email going back and forth between somebody from WikiLeaks and Seth Rich. Can you confirm that? Is that true? Or
Well, the information, guys, that I got about the source, which was an FBI federal investigator, right? That was a source that was developed by the Fox News Channel reporter, Malia Zimmerman, okay? Her and I communicated, and I'll never forget when she called me, right? Thing is, I have nothing to hide, so you know what I mean? So I'll tell you what happened,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
if I screwed up, say, Rod, you screwed up, right? When she called me, she said, Rod, we got this new information that there's this FBI guy, a former FBI guy, a federal investigator, and he said he knows for a fact that emails went from Seth's computer to WikiLeaks. And you know what I asked her? And she'll tell you. I said, is this guy credible? That's what I asked her. She said, he's very credible. And I said, and that's confirmed. She said, it's confirmed. Okay. Well, that's what I rolled with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And just to finish that off and don't give anything away, but Gavin McFadden was the recipient.
Right.
Yeah. So that is confirmed. Okay.
And so she was going to come out in the form of a report on that Tuesday, right? This was a Monday. Well, it was a Monday when she called me and confirmed this to me. I hadn't seen the report. So I'm basing everything I was saying off of the telephone conversation that her and I had. And that was the extent of it. I had never talked to this guy. I never said I talked to the guy.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know who the guy
No,
is.
it's very
you know
clear
what
to
I
me,
mean?
just from listening to what you said and the way you were criticized, that this was fake news hitting you with a smear campaign.
Yeah, and it was, and this is, and here's the other thing, and this is all verifiable. As soon as I got that news from Malia, guess who I called? The police department.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, isn't this what you're supposed to
Yeah,
do?
yeah,
I said-
yeah.
And you know what? I talked to the detective. I said, look, I got this new information. I think we can crack the case. I'm thinking about a murder. I'm sorry.
Right.
I wasn't thinking about everything else.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
He'll tell you. And I called him right away and shared. He said, okay, Rod, thanks. We'll get right on it.
And this is a guy that you know from your years on the force.
No. This
Okay.
is the guy investigating the case now.
Okay.
He wasn't there when I was there.
I see.
And then I picked up the phone and I called Joel Rich,
Uh-huh.
the father.
Yeah.
This is all verified. I'll show you the phone records. I don't have anything to hide. You look at all the phone records. You see everybody else I called.
Right.
Right. I called Joel Rich and I said, Joel, guess what? We just got this information, this FBI. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, what do you think? I said, it sounds like it's pretty good. Whoever this FBI guy is.
Right.
I said, but I think Fox News is going to do a story on it tomorrow. I just want you to be aware. He said, okay, Rod, no problem. Great job.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
I mean, yeah.
And then I called Aaron,
The brother.
the brother,
Yeah.
to let him know. Now, he wasn't as happy about it.
He seems very strange in the interview as well.
When I shared this, I was excited. I'm thinking maybe this is the lead that we need, the witness we need to crack this case. We can
Yeah.
finally get the murderers. This is what I'm thinking. I'm
Yeah.
not thinking we can confirm.
Right.
Are you
Sure.
with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I call Aaron and we're having this conversation. And again, I can't go into a whole lot of details, but I'll tell you one thing I said to him at the end of that conversation. I said, Aaron, and I said it just like this. I said, let me ask you, man, are you all right? He said, what do you mean? I said, do you really want this case solved? He said, Rod, just do what you want to do. Click, and hung up the phone. Because I asked him that because he wasn't acting right to me. You know, if it's your loved one, and I tell you, I think we know who did it or whatever, you go, oh, great, go get him, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to say, well, wait a minute, don't go any more into door number 3. You're not going to say that.
So do you think that's because there's some outside pressure being put on the family, or you can't speculate?
I don't want to speculate. I could speculate, but I don't want to speculate because I'll be clobbered. But I have
course.
some ideas.
Now, we've heard a lot that, sorry, George, we've heard a lot that, you know, things have been said from the family. And is that actually coming from the family, or is that coming from this PR firm that's representing the family?
In my opinion, I think it's coming from the PR firm that's representing the
Do you know the
family.
name of that firm?
Well, I know it's Brad Bauman. Yeah. But I also know that my relationship with Joel and Mary was great. I think they're wonderful people. Joel and Mary wants this case solved.
Of course.
They do.
Of course.
I can't say that for anyone else. But
very strange.
the relationship, Joel gave me information that I'm pretty sure others in his family would not have wanted him to give to me. But see, that's because he wants the case solved.
Of course.
Sure, exactly. So just to nail down the details, you can share metadata, you can't share the details. You called the DC police detective. Can you share that name of who you called?
No, I could, but I don't want to right now. I'd have to get clearance from my attorney. You gotta be
Okay.
careful,
No,
you know what I mean?
Well, then there's 2 rumors out there floating around, and I just wondered if you could debunk either one of them. One of them said that the family was talking to Seth Rich, and he was sitting up at the hospital.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
You
So
didn't get
there's-
involved until well after.
Right, yeah, I don't know
Because
about that.
I've heard different things from different people, and the other one was that Aaron was there talking to him while he was sitting up at the hospital.
I don't know. I don't know.
And-
I don't believe that to be the case, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, and then the last one was if no autopsy, and we actually have had our folks, with the email that you can send for any homicide in the DC area, law requires an autopsy, so we requested that, and then there's Judicial Watch has requested a lot of the documents with Tom Fitton, the phone and the laptop, so forth. So that's proceeding. I think maybe ACLJ, not ACLU, but also American Justice and Law Center is doing some FOIAs for this. That may help in your investigation, I'm not sure. But the other question I had was, Do you know if the family signed off on any kind of consent form for his internal organs? That happens a lot with shooting.
Sure. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never asked that question.
So they haven't. Okay.
And have you seen any information that would lead you to believe that Joe Capone has some sort of relationship with Bob Creamer or has ever dealt with him?
No, I haven't.
So I want to bring it around a little bit closer to what George has been investigating. And I know you've probably been looking at some of the work that we've been doing together since we
Yes.
started talking. So you're probably familiar with Imran Awan and the Awan brothers, the Pakistani ISI infiltration of the IT department at Congress. None of that came into play in your investigation, I presume.
No, it did not.
Anything you want to ask about that, George?
Well, now this is taking you into this world of WikiLeaks, and the first thing I guess is interesting is if you which you have confirmed. Thank you very much that Seth Rich did email Gavin McFadden, and there was an interplay between them.
From the information that I got from the Fox News reporter who had the FBI source.
So
Can you characterize that traffic? Was it a casual once or twice, or was there quite a
See,
bit?
I don't know.
Okay.
Remember, it was on that Monday evening when she called me and told me this new information.
Okay.
I hadn't read it
sort
in
of
the
hearsay,
report.
really.
Yeah, and this was a source she had developed.
Okay.
And I just asked, was it credible? Yes. Is it confirmed? Yes. Okay. And I just ran with it, but I didn't, I don't even know the guy's name. I don't know what the guy I never talked to the guy.
Yeah.
George is very focused on metadata, and there is metadata to indicate a huge data traffic spike on July the 7th.
Yeah, 3 days before he dies, there's two Russians that somehow have access to metadata of a large data transfer from the DNC, where Seth worked, to the Clinton Foundation in New York. Now, that's not necessarily important. It seems very far afield, but there are reports that his boss, Amy Dacey, had some kind of argument about whether that data should be released or not. Then there's this meeting the day before with Joe Capone and Bob Creamer at the White House. It almost seems like maybe there's a cause and effect there, and with Seth being very upset about Hillary potentially moving money or data from his favorite candidates were the Bernie-crats, like myself, over to the Hillocrats. So there are many people who believe that the state of the mind of the person before they died, very important. What is his motive? And that his motive was, we're getting the railroaded here, and I want to prove that this money is being moved over. So many people have speculated, and we don't know yet, but we do have the two Russians that were expelled because they said it was a Russian report. So again, it's speculative here,
Sure.
but that there was this transfer. So we don't know if Seth was performing that transfer or he was reacting to someone else
I see.
moving that data up to the Clinton Foundation.
Certainly interesting, though, the timing.
But
and
the two Russian analysts, do say it moved a very large, unusual amount of traffic, like more than 10 times, from the DNC to the Clinton Foundation, which seems odd, just oddity, anomaly.
Have you ever heard of something called NGP Van? Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Okay, that's
What
related.
is it?
Well, it's the software database that was used for voter information tracking
see.
by the DNC, and it seems to be related to this data spike and possibly something Seth Rich might have been interested in, certainly something WikiLeaks would have been interested in.
If you were trying to prove what I just said, which is they're taking the money away from the Bernie-crats and giving it to the Hillocrats, you could use this software, this VAN software, to prove that. You could say, oh, this is a long set of conversations. Let's say we had 5 or 6 emails that we exchanged, and then, Rod Wheeler said, oh, we're going to give $5,000 to the DNC. If then that showed up later as a $5,000 donation to Hillary, then you could say, whoa,
Right.
these two things don't mix and match. So there is some chatter within the WikiLeaks, Gavin McFadden being in WikiLeaks UK, that's exactly the kinds of conversations that he was having, saying, here's what I need.
I see.
Coaching him and saying, here's what I need to prove, almost down to the zip code level. Now, that's obviously speculation on my part, just knowing Gavin McFadden and his journalism school that he had. So that's why I asked the characterization of how much traffic and email
Went back and forth.
forth.
We didn't go into detail at all. Matter of fact, I didn't even know the number of emails because the local Fox 5 reporter, Marina Morocco, the one that wasn't supposed to break that story that night.
Yeah.
And she wasn't. I don't know if you ever have heard that before, but she wasn't
Didn't
supposed
know
to
that.
break. Yeah, it was just going to be a teaser because we wanted Fox News to break the story the next day if they were going to break the story. I just kind of called myself sharing some information I had just heard with Marina, and she said she was just going to do a teaser. She wound up making it an exclusive
Because that was
story.
just a local affiliate, not the main.
Right, but it blew up.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, that's kind of what happened with that whole process in terms of how the information got out. But yeah, I didn't have any detail in terms of what this FBI informant had told the Fox News reporter, Malia. I had no detail because, see, I was in my car when she called me.
Sure.
And I was on my way to Fox, as a matter of fact, to do a show called Making Money with Charles Payne. We were going to talk about MS-13 that day.
Oh, really?
At 6 o'clock.
That's interesting.
So I was
isn't
on
it?
my way downtown, D.C. anyway when she called, so I wasn't at my computer. And so I'm on the phone listening to her. We canceled that segment that day. But I stayed downtown and had dinner at a restaurant called Art and Soul, and Marina came to the restaurant and got a 30-second clip
Got it.
from me, and that was the exclusive story.
Oh, wow. That's what she led with that night. Yeah.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Clip.
30
Made the news story, yeah.
Change your life.
It's crazy.
Now, Rod, did the death of Sean Lucas come into your investigation
It
at all?
did.
And what, do you have any thoughts about that you can share with us? The
I have
fentanyl
thoughts,
overdose?
yes, for the first part, no for the second part.
got
I
it.
do have some thoughts about Sean Lucas's death.
Yeah, we've been very sort of fascinated by the idea that Sean Lucas, Gavin McFadden, John Jones, Michael Ratner, Seth Rich, all died within a proximity of 2 or 3 months, some of them being in their 20s, and all of them being related, either directly or indirectly, through WikiLeaks, DNC data, and all of this whole thing. There's not really anything you can tell us about that.
I can't go into detail right now about that. Hopefully at some point I will be able to. But I will tell you this. On March 31st, I did a local Fox 5 show that morning, live on the set.
Yep.
This year.
I had just started the investigation, and I shared with the anchor on the air that I'm uncovering somewhat of an underground organized crime ring. I said this on the air.
That's the next
and
thing
I
we want to
said
ask you about.
above and beyond the Seth Rich murder. And the anchor at the time, Allison Seymour is her name. She said, well, can you talk a little bit more about that, Rod? I said, I can't. I said, but I'm just finding some things that's really making me a little uncomfortable. And that's what you just named, with all those names, that's what I was finding.
And was SEIU involved in that criminal syndicate at all?
Not as far as I knew at that time.
Are we going to get killed for having this interview with you?
Run
Because a
for
lot
your
of our
life.
viewers are emailing us that might happen.
Well, there is another thing that happens is that the police chief, Lanier, I think it's Kathy Lanier?
Kathy Lanier.
Yeah.
I know Kathy.
She seems to have a very strong relationship with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She seems to have a strong relationship with Amy Dacey, the boss of Seth Rich. And
A little bit of a checkered past on the force. We were reading an article today from a local paper that said there were a lot of sort of disgruntled officers who left under her command. Can't talk about that, it looks like.
Well, yeah, I didn't work under Kathy,
Okay.
but I was in the academy with Kathy.
Oh,
So I've
really?
been knowing Kathy for years.
Really?
And she's always been a very nice person. I've never seen anything that would indicate anything wrong that she's done or questionable. I haven't.
Well, we're not saying questionable. It's just the facts in the article stated that the officer roles were really dwindling under her, and that a lot of officers were leaving the force.
Some were. I wouldn't say a lot, but there
Okay.
were some.
Okay.
She had some disputes with certain commanders that, I know a lot of the officers said, wow, that's kind of crazy, and went to other departments. But I don't know anything specific in terms
Sure.
of that.
So
I have heard some things, and I don't want to say, I'll tell you later, but I have
Sure.
heard some things. I wouldn't repeat it now on camera because I can't verify it. And I
Understandable.
don't want to just speculate.
Of course.
But I will share with you what I heard later after the cameras are off.
Okay.
Okay. So there are some emails in the WikiLeaks from John Podesta, especially, not the first set of WikiLeaks, which is happening somewhere between May 25th is the last email, and then June 12th or 13th, somewhere in there. That's Seth Rich might be the person that gave those. But there's a second set that come out in October 7th timeframe that he certainly couldn't have given because they have later time frames after his death. So there is a second person. Now there's a guy. There are several emails in those Podesta leaks that say we need to make an example out of someone. Just some things that call out who is the leaker, and then Podesta responds Eric Braverman. So it would lead you to believe that there was some state of mind that there was someone else other
Right.
than. Then there's an ambassador from UK. His name's Craig Murray. He flies over here, tries to get in the country on the 6th of September. That doesn't work, and then he comes in, I think, for a speech at American University around September 22nd, 23rd. He says he goes to the back of American University, a wooded area, and gets a thumb drive from somebody from the DNC and WikiLeaks. So putting one and one together, maybe WikiLeaks leaker 2 knows WikiLeaks leaker 1.
Did any of these guys come into the investigation?
No, not in my investigation.
Yeah. So he's still alive. I don't know how much longer.
Craig
but-
Murray.
Yeah, Craig Murray.
Well, and Eric Braverman, we don't know. That was the start of George's investigation, is where is this guy, Eric Braverman?
there's been
So no one can find him?
well, he's never had a public appearance. There's been a couple of tweets that said, "Oh, Eric Braverman's going to run the Google Foundation," but that isn't really like going out and getting a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Right.
George has been to Yale investigating, seminars he's supposed to be giving that are mysteriously rescheduled. I went to an apartment that was supposedly his apartment that seemed like an apartment I didn't want to knock on the door of. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. There's one other name I want to ask you about. Did someone by the name of Wingate Robinson come into the investigation at all?
One of the officers, I guess there's a moped officer that first comes to see a woman, and then there's this Mr. Officer Wingate Robinson comes there, and then there's 3 of the officers have body cams and 2 don't.
I've
Elaborate.
heard of that, yeah.
Yeah,
but I was told that no one knows where the body cam video footage is.
How common is that, would you say?
It's not common at all. This is the police department of a major city. I can see it if we were in, small town Iowa somewhere. We're talking a major city. You lose the video camera for everybody?
It's very strange. And something that I'm sure you're familiar with, having been on the force and everything, I see a lot of parallels in the mysterious death of Seth Rich and another government employee, Vince Foster. Now, people are definitely going to call me a conspiracy theorist about this, but when I see similarities like missing photographic evidence, anyone questioning the story being immediately called a conspiracy theorist and being kind of like, run out of town and cease and desisted and made fun of on the internet and all that. Why is that happening?
Don't know.
It seems strange, doesn't it?
It is strange, yeah. It's to cause somewhat of a distraction or a deflection, I guess I should say. You know what I mean? If they can shift the narrative to, in this particular case, to this horrible former DC detective who's really just
Talking about you.
talking about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, shift the narrative to that.
You seem like a nice guy.
Instead of being focused on who killed this guy
Right.
and listen to what I'm saying. But see, and I think they've been somewhat successful with shifting the narrative.
Absolutely.
We went to the crime. I went to the crime scene. I knocked on doors. A lot of the people I talked to said no one knocked on any doors. No one said, "Hey, did you see anything?" Which normally collecting witnesses near the crime scene is pretty much 101. I went to the convenience store, which is cat a corner from W and Flagler, and asked for the camera footage, and got really kind of an aggressive response from people coming to the store, third parties, in kind of an intimidating fashion. Somehow that's lost. The convenience store footage is lost.
The police department has that.
They
The
do.
police department has the camera footage.
Have you
That's
seen
what
any of that
I
footage?
haven't seen. I couldn't see it.
I haven't seen it.
No, they told me I don't need to see it.
You
But
don't
that's
need
fine.
to see it.
I don't need to see it. I'm only
This
the
is not the
detective.
George you're looking for, Rod.
Yeah. That's what I was told. I can't see it.
So you've been told the convenience
But
store.
I was told that the video, but I
It's
was
not
told
much.
that it doesn't really show much.
Well,
but
then why can't we see it? So there's really more questions than there are answers at this point.
But where did you get the name Wingate Robinson? I know that was one of the officers on the scene.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about that person? Or?
Well, there's a strong tie to John Podesta at Georgetown. He ran track for Georgetown, and I think he was a running back at Georgetown. And I don't know what kind of connections to the Podestas since then, but I do know Heather Podesta, the previous wife of his brother Tony, has strong ties with the DC police.
I see.
And that's where pressure could be coming from. And I think almost a kind of a fatherly interest in Officer Wingate Robinson. So I just think everyone wants to see an arm's length relationship in the investigation, and can't understand why these normal things don't happen.
Right.
So I think that's. And it's odd because I published all the badge numbers and I published all the names, but his name was capitalized, almost like if you're press, talk to this guy, because it was just an odd press release. It was an odd press release.
Well, those are really all the questions that I had. George, anything else you want to talk about?
I have a couple. I mean, would the shot spotter be able to? I mean, the 22 sounds a lot different than a 44 or 38, right? Mm-hmm. Would it be able to determine the caliber of the gun?
Not precisely, but it'd give you a pretty good idea.
Did they share that information with you?
I didn't need to see it.
Okay.
I was told.
Oh, that's what you're told,
you didn't
right?
need to see it.
I don't need to see it.
So there was
I mean,
It's really an obstruction of your investigation.
there was
yeah.
there was an FBI car that was burglarized, and the FBI offered $10,000. There was a weapon stolen, but more importantly, a secure radio that was missing. Any connection? It's odd. What seemed odd to me is the FBI would offer the $10,000 for the recovery of the radio, but not offer $100,000, let's say, for the recovery of information relating to Seth Rich's death.
Yeah, I can't say anything about that.
Got
Okay.
it. Got it.
I want to, but I can't. I want to, but I can't.
So what do you think the odds are that you'll be able to publish your report?
We're working. My attorney is working with the family's attorney, and we're trying to reach some kind of a settlement. They adamantly do not want me to release any information I have, period, no matter what. So we'll have to see where it goes.
Okay. Is there, have you been involved in any of these cases where there's a public right to know versus the family's wishes? I mean,
I haven't.
yeah. Okay.
See, because it's interesting, this murder case really has become kind of the crux of the whole entire impeachment, where it's a question of Russia hacking or some internal person leaking. Mm-hmm. And irrespective of what anyone thinks about the man who is the president currently, we're talking about an assault on the office of the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. And that seems like a very serious matter, to have all of these things happening to really obstruct the effective investigation of this murder that is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're very concerned about that, and that's actually why we asked you here today. And we're really happy
It's
that
got to
you
be
could give
one
us
of the
these
two.
answers.
Well, the first two doors that you spoke of, but it's either a leak or it's a hack at this point. I mean,
Right.
Schumer and Schiff are pushing the hack pretty strong, or it could be a leak.
And that answer is behind door number 3.
But you don't need to look behind that door.
But I
It's a
can't see
lock.
behind. They don't want me to see behind
That's
door
quite
number
crazy.
3.
Okay.
Well, listen, Rob, we really appreciate the
Sure.
time,
Well,
and
thank
we
you very
appreciate
much.
you
I
being as
appreciate it.
forthcoming as you
Sure.
could be.
Nice meeting you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hopefully,
meeting
we
you
can
too,
speak to you
George.
again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.